A 12-acre cane farm nestled in the rolling countryside of Nasau has now been transformed into a picturesque orchid and anthurium nursery by owners Aileen and the late Don Burness. Welcome to South Sea Orchid.
And these are, we make use of all the walls. These are all the cement walls.
South Sea Orchid, or SSO for short, is a Flora Culture based business that first started in 1987. South Sea Orchid is a nursery that sells both cut flowers and plants, and in addition runs pre-booked tours for tourists and visitors. For years, they've been welcoming visitors to their homes and surrounding nurseries, sharing the history of their ancestors through the wonderful memorabilia in their home, a family museum which imparts so much history to all who visit. The late Donald Burness, a third-generation European of Scottish, English and Welsh descent, with his wife Aileen, a unique mix of island and Chinese ancestry, are renowned horticulturists, pioneers to the flourishing horticulture industry in Fiji. Alongside their work on the Garden of the Sleeping Giant, which was then owned by Raymond Burr, the actor best known for his role as Perry Mason in the TV series, Don and Aileen have also done much of the landscaping and gardens at Denarau and on many other hotels and island resorts, as well as the airport. Donald was a beloved member of the society and loved by all who had the pleasure of knowing him. He will forever be remembered as the founder of the Flora Culture in Fiji.
What is your favorite orchid plant?
Actually, I don't know. I have a lot of orchids named after me.
Oh!
Raymond Burr did an orchid and he named it after me. There were two different ones, two different cattleyas that he named after me before he died.
Aileen Burness, also known as the Wonder Woman of Orchids, continues to carry on the legacy she and her husband have built with the help of their grandson Stephen Henry by conducting outgrow programs, helping teach mainly women best orchid growing and harvesting practices.
My name is Aileen and Don and I started our project. We started South Sea Orchids in the early 50s in Suva, and then we came to Nadi, and then we did the Sleeping Giant, and then in 97, after the 97 coup, we started our own project from Saweni. And then in 1996, I started the Women's Project, growing cut flowers in their backyard. And what they did was, they grew orchids, and we guaranteed that we would sell everything that they produced, regardless. And we were able to do that. And we still do the project today. We're still selling the flowers. We sell them out to Suva. The courier comes in the evening and the florists get their flowers first thing the next morning.
Running a business as such is no easy task. Aileen has enlisted the help of her grandson Stephen and a small but efficient team of reliable and honest hard workers to help her see through day-to-day operations and events.
Now today we're linking up with Stephen Henry, and for many people he's a recognizable face as a representative for the Fiji squash team. But for most people, he is well known in the Fiji orchid industry. Let's go meet Stephen. Hey Stephen, morning. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for having us here today. And I know you've got a bit of things planned for us. But before we get into that, you guys, Stephen is a very recognizable face. We remember him from squash. He represented Fiji, and now he's here at South Sea Orchids. How did you get involved with this, with the orchid?
Okay, so just as I got out of school, I was very close to the family, the Burnesses, and so I started working here for a little bit, and found out that I had a passion, for orchids.
Yeah.
And so 9-10 years later, I learned everything I could off Mr. Burness, and now he sort of taught me everything, and now I'm the one who's teaching everybody else about sort of orchids now. Yeah.
Speaking of teaching, I know that there's a little bit of a workshop planned, but tell me about the itinerary that you have planned for us.
Okay, so so today we'll do a little bit of a tour.
Yeah?
We'll go upstairs, we'll do a little bit of a history tour about the house.
Yeah.
And then after that, we'll look around the garden for a bit, and then tomorrow we have a workshop that we're going to do that we've been doing. We got a little bit of funding to go out and teach a lot of the ladies how to look after orchids, what to do with their orchids. And yeah, after the workshop, tomorrow night we have a function. We have a function for, it's a fundraiser for mental health, and I'm doing a lot of fundraisers for a lot of kids' lunches as well. So things like that.
Lovely.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so a couple of things.
All right. Shall we get started with the tour, or are you still busy?
Well, you're going to help me.
Oh,
Yeah,
am
you're
I?
going to help me.
Okay,
All right,
what are we
so,
doing? What are we doing?
So we're going to try and divide this orchid here. So this is called a dendrobium.
Okay.
All right, so
What do you want me
what
to
I'm
do?
going to get you to do is just pull off a lot of this gravel from the plant.
Like pull it
Yeah.
off? Like
Yeah, just take out all of the gravel, pull off the plastic bag.
Oh, okay.
And what we're going to do is we're going to try and divide this here.
Oh, this is harder than it looks.
Yeah.
And am I damaging the roots
No,
by
no,
doing this
yeah,
at all?
They're really hardy, so yeah, you can get in there. We're going to
Okay.
cut off a lot of these roots anyway.
Okay, okay.
A lot of these roots.
I'm not doing a good job of
Yeah.
pulling off the plastic. I'm sorry, this is like a
That's
little
all
bit
good.
stuck.
Pull it. Yeah. Just get right with it.
Oh, you
There
needed was
go.
muscles.
There we
I don't
go.
have that.
All right, so now what we're going to do is identify the plant, the lead
Okay.
of the plant. So this is the front. Now what I'm going to get you to do is just count 3 canes back, and you're going to try and cut that plant there.
Okay.
All right, so
So what's
so-
the lead?
so this is
The-
basically the lead, the one with the leaves.
Okay.
Okay, and so
So-
you count maybe 1, 2, 3. That's a minimum, but for now we're just going to go ahead and cut over here. All right, we're going to cut back in the middle.
Like where?
If you don't mind, right over here, right down there. I'll get you to cut that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah?
Do I need muscles for that as well? Okay. So right down
Right
the...
there, right where that's tearing.
Oh, okay. How do... Damn,
You can
Stephen.
get that?
Like that?
Yep, perfect.
Ah, okay. Oh,
Yep, cut those roots back. All right,
Okay.
perfect. Set. All right, oh good. So that's your new plant that you're going to go and plant in the pot?
okay, cool. With all these extra roots involved as well?
Yep, we're going to use all of those roots, and if you can just cut these ones back, this is not dead. All right, so basically you can just cut all of those roots back.
Like
Yep,
from here?
take it all away.
I suck at this. Let me do it from here. So it's important to take all the gravel out. Hey,
Right.
okay. So these are not dead, even though they look a bit...
They look dead, but they're not dead. So basically all these canes here are going to shoot later, and so you get a whole lot of new stock.
Okay, cool. So this is already like my first teaching lesson. You just started your workshop early.
There you go.
Okay.
So you got your new plant here that you're going to replant,
Yeah?
that one there, and then you leave this on the bench, and then this will shoot for you later, and you can plant the new babies. When we say babies.
Right. I'm just gonna cut this because it's annoying me.
Right.
It's like one extra root.
Set.
Okay.
All right.
So, are we done?
Yeah, done.
I've gained my golden ticket. To the house
Right.
tour. Okay.
Okay, set. We go to the house.
So, tell me a little bit about the history of this house tour.
Okay, so the Burnesses, originally they came down in the early 1860s, right? And so we have a lot of early European settler artifacts up in the house. So basically, when we do have tours, I'll go through and I'll point out only the artifacts, and then some of the Fijian artifacts that we have around the house.
Okay, cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right.
Which way?
This way.
Coming up next, we get a historic tour of the Burness family home, including a little history on how Prince Charles once visited the home.
Horticulture is also floriculture. horticulture is mostly like fruit trees and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
And flora culture is flowers.
Today we're visiting the famous South Sea Orchids in Nasau Nadi. Following the passing of her husband Don, Aileen and Stephen are now leading the charge to educate and empower all orchid growers locally and regionally.
South Sea Orchids do what we call a home and garden tour. My husband Don is the one that first started it. He was the horticulturalist and he's the one that helped us do the project for women.
Part of the experience you can expect to get at SSO is their home and garden pre-booked tours. Today we'll be getting a glimpse of both the South Sea Orchid home and garden with the help of Stephen.
Full of green pillars. Welcome to South Sea Orchids. My name is Stephen Henry, and basically I'm just going to give you guys a little tour around the house of South Sea Orchids. And what we do here is sort of agro-tourism, where we have a history tour, and then we also have a lot of the orchids that we have out on display. And I'm going to go through the house and point out a lot of artifacts that we have. We have a lot of artifacts that were passed down through the generations of the Burness family. And then I talk about some of the Fijian artifacts that we have around the house as well. I will start over here and point out the old English oak piano brought out by those early settlers just to make a lifestyle here. Okay, made in just 1901, so just basically over 100 years old. Okay, and just brought in to make a lifestyle for those early European settlers. All right, over here we have a sewing chair, which would have belonged to my great-great-great-grandmother. Now, she brought this in from Australia in the mid-1850s, and then later brought into Fiji in around 1864. So from the UK to Australia in the mid-1850s, and then later on to Fiji in 1864. And the reason we usually point out the chair is just to show people how small those early settler people were. Of course, now only a child would be able to sit in this chair perfectly. All right, now the organ, made by Story Clark Chicago, brought out from USA to early settlement New Zealand, and then later on to Fiji almost 200 years ago now. All right, all its original piece, pump bellows right down to the tapestry on the stool. I'd just like to point out the writing desk, which actually would have belonged to my great-great-great-grandfather, and he was actually one of the first postmasters of Fiji. And on it, his set of scales, which of course in those days you would roll up your letter into a scroll, put on one end of the scale and a weight on the other to determine how much it was going to cost you. And his dictionary, which was compiled in the early 1860s. Interestingly, a vehicle in here is described as a horse-drawn carriage with either wooden or stone wheels. So before the invention of the motor car. Over here, the sewing machine, a Wilcox and Gibbs chain stitch sewing machine, where 4 generations of children's clothes were sewn on. All right, now over here in the cabinet, we have a couple of things here. A lot of the royal family, a lot of things about the royal family, and on the top shelf we have 8 very early lead crystal wine goblets that came out of Scotland and are 300 years old. Over here, a little bit of family history. This is a primitive painting of those early settler homes. That one actually would have been my great-great-great-grandparents' first home when they moved to Fiji. Okay, that was in 1864. This is a picture of them in 1902. Right, and we always tell the tourists this is basically, they still wore Victorian-style clothes back in those days. Right? Even with the heat and humidity, they still wore the Victorian-style clothes back then. Over here, we have a portrait, okay, of a great Scottish grandmother. Now, a great-great-grandfather actually got an artist to come out from New Zealand to paint her. And of course, in those days, that was quite a feat. Of course, you had to get the artist to go on a sailing ship, sail from Auckland to Suva, and then from Suva on horseback over mountains to the state in which they were staying at the time, just to paint her. Now we also talk about a lot of the Fijian artifacts that we have around the house. Talk a little bit about the tambua, give them a brief idea about the tambua and its importance to Fiji, and also and also the wasekiseki. And this wasekiseki is pretty important as this was actually given to David Wilkinson for his works on Lands Commission from Ratu Rakambau to David Wilkinson. So quite an important piece of an artifact for us here. Basically that's the end of the history tour, and then after that I take out the guests to go and see some of the display orchids that we have outside on the veranda. So we bring them out here and then we show them all selection of different orchids that we have out here. Most of our rare ones we keep up on the veranda. So as you see over here we have a collection of anthuriums, phalaenopsis and cattleyas mostly taking up those benches. The hanging orchids up here, all strap-leaf vandas, and then a whole bunch of other landscape plants that we keep inside the nursery.
We do workshops, we do events, we do home and garden tours, we do all sorts of bits and pieces. Birthday parties, if anyone wants a birthday party, we do have them here. And a wedding, so our granddaughter was married here and in the garden, so you know, it's we make use of what we have and we train as many women as we can.
Coming up next, let's go visit the Orchid Nursery and get to know Aileen.
And they all thought he was great, but they thought I was a bit of a witch, you know.
Okay guys, we're just heading to the nursery and we'll show you what types of orchids that we have in our nursery. Yeah?
Today we're getting a behind-the-scenes tour of the home and nursery here at South Sea Orchids.
South Sea Orchids do what we call a home and garden tour. My husband Don is the one that first started it. He was the horticulturalist and he's the one that helped us do the project for women. He was the one that actually started, you know, most of the women growing not only orchids but gingers, heliconias, anthuriums, and we go out to the villages and see some of the ladies and stuff like that, and you know, he was always busy doing that sort of thing, helping mostly our women. They all liked him and they all thought he was great, but they thought I was a bit of a witch, you know.
Stephen, a close family friend of the Burnesses and most definitely the late Don Burness's understudy, has now taken on the role of helping teach others everything orchids.
This is basically a 1 acre shade house, a 50% shade house, and we house most of our dendrobium cut flowers in the house. Alright, so if you walk over this side, you'll notice that most of our cut flowers are all planted in these soft black plastic pots, and all of our plants are planted in gravel, blue crushed metal. Now 3/4 of our house is made up of the cut flower variety of orchids, all brought in from the University of Hawaii in Hawaii, and the other quarter of our house has been made up of a potted plant variety that we have here, all in the hard plastic pots, and all of them are from Southeast Asia, all from Thailand. We also have over here some of our anthuriums and our gazmanias under this 80% shade cloth as well. So these types here, these are your anthuriums, okay? These ones here, these are your anthuriums. And these are just 2 different types that we have, the miniature red and the pink. But we do have in total about 6 or 8 colors that we have at the moment. Over here, our bromeliads. Okay, so these varieties here are called gazmanias. And usually a lot of people now are using this for displays. But compared to other bromeliads, they don't have any thorns on them. All right, so people usually use these for displays without injuring people, whereas your other bromeliads usually have thorns on them. Okay, so we have in total about 9 different colors with the gazmanias. With all the orchids, all of the cut flower varieties, we will only replant after about 5 years. So they stay in their PB5 bags for up to about 5 years. We don't touch them, all we do is harvest the flowers. At the moment we're going through a dormant period where they lose all their flowers, and yeah, it's about 3 to 4 months where we have a dormant period, and then coming into our cyclone period, our summertime, that's when we get flushes for our cut flower varieties. We also have our cattleyas here, the ones which these only flower about once or twice a year, these cattleya varieties. Usually a lot of people in the West don't have anthuriums. The reason is because they love their water. Okay, so usually you find a lot of the anthuriums on the other side of the island in Suva, and they do very well. So with the anthuriums, first off, they need a lot of shade, so we've got an 80% shade here, the shade house, instead of the 50% for the orchids. So a lot of shade, 80% shade, and they also epiphytic plants where they don't like to be sitting in soil. So all of our media for the anthuriums are rice husk, and we also have a little bit of manure mixed in with it just to keep some moisture. Alright, so yeah, with the anthuriums, usually also something very aerated. You can use the ganimbulu, but we find that the rice husk is a lot better to use. So yeah, a lot of water, aerated media like rice husk, and a lot of shade, 80% shade. And yeah, your anthuriums will be happy. So yeah, this is our vanda beds, or we have a hill that we have a whole lot of vandas on display. So a lot of people are used to a lot of these common ones that we have. We'll have a lot of common ones that are in here, John clubs. We have some John clubs here, and some of the magiois, or what a lot of people call them, the spider orchid or the tiger orchid. But in this bed here we have a whole lot of more rare vandas, mocaras and arandas. And we've got them out in the full sun, which a lot of people don't think that you can do, but they flower a lot more often out here. In the west though, we have to water a lot more for these vandas. So they do quite well on the other side in Suva. But all basically in ganimbulu or coconut husk, not in the soil. Okay, so everything is just with the coconut husk. We have black plastic on the bottom just to keep weeds out from the coconut husk.
Okay, Stephen, thank you so much for
Yeah, no
the
worries.
beautiful house tour.
No worries.
Like actually blown away with so much artifacts that you guys have and history preserved. So what are we doing tomorrow?
Okay, so tomorrow we'll go, we'll start the workshop early. And then basically we're just going to go through all of the orchids that we have here in Fiji.
Yeah.
All right, and then we'll talk a little bit about each one of them and how you look after them.
Yeah.
We'll touch a little bit on anthuriums and gosmanias as well. But basically, yeah, everything to cover from fertilizing, watering, shade, insecticides and fungicides if you have to, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, so that's bright and early tomorrow?
Bright and early tomorrow.
Thanks for getting me to wake up really early. Okay.
Join us next week for the SSO Orchid Growers Forum. Stephen and Levi walk us through some basic orchid care tips and a hands-on workshop with the participants.
With vandas, they don't flower until they've reached the top of whatever they're growing on.
Mrs. Burness tells us more about the history and works of SSO.
The women know how to do things properly, how to grow their plants properly, and how to be just a farmer and not want to be everything.
And we end the visit with a charity dinner gala and some performances. We'll see you next week.